you for watching CFL Talk. Welcome to Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on CFL Talk, joining me is David Morassutti. If I seem a little off a little bit, the only way I can describe it is shocking news. A name has come back to the Argos from the past, a good past, assistant coach then and defensive coordinator Chris Jones. There's a talk that he's connected with joining the Toronto Argonauts. David, and the reasons for that. Give us the story as you can gather it so far.
Yeah, so it was first reported by Justin Dunk, 3 Down Nation. Got to give him credit for grabbing this first. He said that Chris Jones was coming to Toronto because, as the Argonauts website, and I just checked there a few minutes ago, Glenn Young and Joshua Bell, who's the defensive back coach, are no longer listed on the team's website. So usually that means they're not with the team. So Justin Dunk said that Chris Jones would become the team's defensive coordinator, but people are wondering what exactly led to the situation. So thankfully, Dave Naylor, right on top of it, he said that the MLSE has implemented a full vaccination requirement for all employees. So as you know, if you're working for MLSE, whether it's behind the scenes or with the teams, you're paid and working for Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. So according to Naylor, both Glenn Young and Josh Bell are now on leave. They are not fired. They have not been terminated. They are on leave. So that means they're no longer with the team. Rich Stubler, who has been working with the team, I've seen him at practice. He's been working they call him a consultant. He is now going to assume the role as defensive coordinator for this week because the Argos do have a game on Friday. So he'll make the defensive calls. And Naylor, talking with GM Pinball Clemens, said that there will still be some details to iron out. Chris Jones is among the people being a part of the decision to maybe replace Glenn Young while he's on leave, but it's not been finalized yet. But if Chris Jones, who not too long ago announced that he is leaving his job down in Pittsburgh to now come up and work for the Argos. So whether the Argos want to announce it or not, Chris Jones has, and Frank, you know Chris Jones very well. He kind of beats his own drum, the beat of his own drum sometimes, and it appears that he is going to move away from, I think it was a high school job. Yeah, South Pittsburgh High School to now return to the CFL with the Argonauts.
That's his alumni. That's the school he went to.
Yeah.
So, he knows the team. He knows the town. So he has mentioned that he's coming to Toronto. I doubt that it won't be true. I'm sure he has something of, at the very least, some sort of letter of intent to sign a contract, which just basically means there's some I's and some T's that need to be taken care of, dotted and crossed, of course. Who is Chris Jones? For those of you that have a very short memory or just joined the Canadian Football League fan club, if you will, in 2012, Chris Jones, I don't have to read this. This is something that it was big news when it happened. 2012, we had a very big Grey Cup. It was the 100th Grey Cup. He was, in fact, the defensive coordinator of the Toronto Argonauts that won that Grey Cup. And defense had a lot to do with it. In other words, so did Chris Jones. Chris Jones then moved to Edmonton. Edmonton. Won a Grey Cup in Edmonton, and within a couple of weeks, he moved on. He moved on to Saskatchewan. In Edmonton, he was, he's a title collector. He wears many hats, which is an interesting situation coming to Toronto. You've got a young coach, you've got a GM, Pinball Clemens, you've got, You got an assistant GM here. So there's a lot of positions that are full that when he left Saskatchewan that were his, like those were his titles. So I guess the point I'm trying to make, and I think this is a fair statement, he loves to be in control of the team vertically and horizontally. There's not a position he's not willing to take responsibility for. But he is a team coach. Players love him, all that kind of stuff, and he's won wherever he's been.
Yeah, and he went to the NFL in 2019 to work with the Browns. So this is somebody who's well regarded in the football community. I mean, Odell Willis just tweeted not too long ago that if Chris Jones is joining the Argos, that's a Grey Cup favorite right there. Which it shows just with. I know Odell Willis has some prior history with Chris Jones, so players do like. Well, I will say most players like playing for him. I've heard some stories the other way around as well, but yeah, this is not something I expected to look up when I looked up on Twitter this morning to see that all this was going down very quickly. Like it just happened. Like it probably now apparently Pinball addressed the team this morning to let them know, and it was kind of a tough news to break because if you're looking at this, the Argos defense has been I would say one of the top units in the league to start the season. Like this is not, and I think people need to realize this is not a performance issue. This is a non-football issue that has now crept into the football, into the team's game plan now.
It's health and safety has become a real concern because tied to health and safety is the ability for the Toronto Argonauts and every other CFL team to meet the standards required that allows them to have a season, A. B, allows them to have not a full season, but 14 games, that allows them to travel from province to province, that allows American workers, football players, to come to Canada and play for the team. And then the big one, the fans coming to the stadiums. So they cannot afford and have decided that they will do whatever it takes, lockstep with the desires of the Canadian Health, the Federal Health Department, whatever they want, Health Canada. They're going to say, yep, we're going to do it. And you can check on us. We'll, testing, vaccinations. And we know that the Toronto Argonauts and the rest of the Canadian Football League, they've agreed to have 85%, right? Mm-hmm. Vaccinated. Now, here's the reason this is a problem. The league is going with 85%. Corporations, as has been the case in Canada, big corporations, one of which MLSE is one, they have decided to make the political and health requirement, which is fully vaccinated if you work for MLSE. So now I wonder, David, now we've heard about a coach that not because of performance, and we haven't heard officially because he isn't vaccinated or refuses to be tested. That's where it was before, right? Vaccination or testing, right? Now with MLSE, they want everybody to be fully vaccinated. So now what happens to those players that are on the Argos right now? Maybe I'm skipping a step. We can talk about that in a second, but let's finish with the assistant coach, Glenn Young, and the DB coach. So this is the assumption right now that they weren't fully vaccinated, and it doesn't sound like they're willing to be. Or, the only way it works for them, and why would you go through the trouble of going to Chris Jones if either of those two or both decided they were going to get vaccinated? Said, "Okay, I'll get vaccinated." But to be fully vaccinated, there's a 2-week period after the second vaccination. And if that was the case, then we would have somebody taking over for them for 2 weeks. They wouldn't be looking for another guy if they were willing to get vaccinated.
And at the same time, is Chris Jones going to just come up to the CFL for 2 weeks to coach for 2 weeks and then, say sayonara? I don't see that as, you said, Chris Jones has, I wouldn't say an agenda, but it's very clear that he's he's coming in with the knowledge that he's going to be the guy for his job. Now, some are reporting that maybe he's coming up and it's going to boomerang him to another position
Uh-huh.
because
Or another team.
because we know that there's a certain team out west that's had two very difficult losses that he is very familiar with. So there's that brewing around a little bit. I think that's way too speculative for me to think that's right. But we the thing is that I mean, until the team fully gives a statement saying why exactly, and that's something I'm going to be working on once we're done the show. Why exactly? What exactly is the situation? Is this a situation where the coaches are just they for either personal or health reasons? We don't know. Are they just choosing to not be vaccinated or cannot be vaccinated, and they're stepping aside for this year, or that's basically where I'm going to be at right now because it's this is a situation that no one expected, and it's now you wonder how many other teams are going to be in a very similar.
Well, only if they demand that players and coaches be vaccinated. This issue, we've seen a player. The CFL has said, nobody can hire this player. This player is suspended from the Canadian Football League because he, we know now that because he faked being vaccinated, he basically eliminated himself from being able to play in the Canadian Football League. And we know that COVID has affected the Canadian Football League, as I said. Now, we don't know for a fact that's why, they're leaving, but we've heard, and the whispers that we're hearing and the comments that we're hearing that are unofficial, but, dependable reporters have noted, right, that there's basically, you can read between the lines, the way they're, again, though, we're reading between the lines. As you said, you're going to do your thing because that's who you are. You're going to make sure you're going to check out the story and see where it leads, and basically to ensure, because it wouldn't be far from the truth that Chris Jones before has put his name out there that he's available, right? And in essence, this says he's available. He said that. Now he said he's he has a position, but intent and a locked in contract, there's a lot that happens in between those 2 points, right? Because if there's an intent to work for the Argos, then they gotta finalize how much he gets paid. They gotta figure out how it fits into their cap. All these things are today's CFL, right? And then you jam the big cloud over the CFL, which is COVID.
So this is the part about the salary cap that maybe I'm thinking here that if a coach has decided to go on leave because of this, now first off, is he being paid? I would assume there's got to be some sort of. I don't think if you're leaving without being paid. So I think maybe there's a clause in this, with COVID and everything, that if a player or coach decides to go on leave because of it, the team doesn't get penalized for it. Which, in my opinion, they shouldn't be, because this is not, they're not letting them go, as we've already said. Like they're expected to retain their role. So maybe this is just, as long as they are not with the team, they do not count with the cap, which some might think is, we've already heard with the Argos and cap shenanigans. This is not something the Argos are trying to nag or get away with. This is something that they're trying to deal with because they don't have a defensive coordinator. And
right.
You can't, Rich Stubler, I'm already seeing some Argos fans worried about Rich Stubler. And all I will say about that is he has been with the team since training camp.
Right.
Or near the end of training camp. He has been working with this team. It's
since Dinwiddie has been hired.
Yeah. So this is not like, he has no experience with this group right now. He's been very vocal with some of the guys in practice. He's been, he's not right in the middle of everything, but he is, he's putting in the work, and we've seen the results in this defense. So it's not like he's hurting them with his presence right now. So yeah, it's going to be an ongoing situation. I'm sure we're going to hear, maybe we'll hear something while we're talking about some other stuff. We'll keep an eye on that.
Here's something I'll add to what you said. There is a difference between players and coaches. we know this historically with the Canadian Football League. We know this from the position of guaranteed contracts. We know that coaches have contracts, not a coaching fraternity. They don't have a coaching association to go to. So each coach makes a deal independent of any other coach. There is no standard contract for a coach. So when we think about this in the context of COVID when they were signed, I'm sure there's some clauses in their contracts that basically say the rules could change for COVID. You may be asked to be vaccinated at this time. We understand we're not going to make you, but in the future you might, and if asked, you will be required to do that. And so they sign a contract under those terms. That's why things can change about face when the corporation changes its standard, right? So in essence, the coaches can be dictated to by policy because of their contract. The players, on the other hand, they couldn't do this to a player. The only reason they were able to suspend the player that wasn't truthful, as we understand it, was because he wasn't truthful, and that caused him to be suspended. He wouldn't have been suspended if he fired. I want to make that distinction. There's suspended and fired. So I think the coach is suspended, if I were to use a word, as opposed to being fired. In that suspension, because he voluntarily decided to go against, he foregoes his contract. And so the Argos don't have to pay him. And if they don't have to pay him, or the defensive back coach, and we know that with Chris Jones, he would do both those jobs because he was a defensive back coach, defensive coordinator, head coach, and vice president of the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Yeah, exactly. He has no problem assuming as many roles, as long as the money, he's not doing all this to save the team money. It's more so because he wants.
For now, money's not the issue, I think, with him. He's basically put, it's not like he's not willing to change teams. You know what I mean? I mean, he won a Grey Cup, and a week later, he signed on with Saskatchewan. I mean, it wasn't long. So, this is what he is. He's a guy who's so good at what he does. He gets away with doing things that other coaches shouldn't even think about doing, or employees of a CFL team.
Exactly. And, we don't know exactly first off, we don't even know he's confirmed it. He said it, the team hasn't confirmed it. That's the first thing that needs to be sorted out. His role will also need to be defined. If he is truly defensive coordinator, is he a consultant?
There's another reason why the Argos aren't mentioning it now that I'm making an educated guess here. I don't know, but Chris Jones's contract needs to be approved by the Canadian Football League.
And he needs to go through a quarantine process before he can even join the team.
So the Canadian Football League right now is making a decision whether they allow this guy, whether they basically agree to this contract, because essentially they get to decide on every contract. And they have their own set of rules and guidelines that they want to make sure are adhered to. And what you said right now is at the top of the list.
Exactly. It's everything in the this is also how some people find out about these things before others, is because the CFL ops tends to give some favoritism. I'm not going to say to who, but it has to go through the CFL first, because again, when there's a salary cap, the league needs to know all the works around of the contract to know whether or not there's anything in the contract that makes the teams void or not stay in compliance with the salary cap, which is also the reason why I hate the salary cap.
Well, is that saying the stars have to align? In this case, it's COVID, salary, and the politics of the move that they made. Can the CFL live with what they did? Like, can a guy be suspended, his salary, being a coach, be removed, displaced, not considered? Or is there a process where his contract has to be nullified. In other words, to the point where the Argos now have this money to pay this guy, being Chris Jones. So it was very complicated before COVID. Now with COVID affects everything, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that people are asked to do that there are a few people, not, and I dare say 50% that aren't happy to get vaccinated and or go through the ritual of, that's what we've learned about football, right? The reason they're getting to 85 is because they're going, well, I want to work. That's the decision you make, right? Do you want to work or not? You still don't have to. You don't have to get vaccinated. Just, wait for another league to invite you to play. But that's the CFL, and, the CFL has the right to make that determination. Whether people politically can accept it or not, they're a business. They have to meet standards that, the government lays out. Let's keep that in mind. What the CFL is doing isn't something that they concocted in their brain. It's they have taken advice from doctors who were with the Canadian Health, right?
Yeah.
And those doctors now have given, they're sort of like the bridge between Health Canada and the league, right? They're the connection. So they're the ones that make sure that the league understands what Health Canada wants, and they help the league understand how to execute the health standards, right? And it's a learning process. And, anybody who understands anything and is willing to be open to understanding understands that when it comes to COVID, health, and all this stuff, it's fluid. There is no hard, one decision today may be changed by something that happens in the future. This is what we've learned from COVID. It isn't because health and the Canadian Football League can't make up their mind. That's what people try to suggest. That's what people try to promote. But it isn't. This whole situation with COVID changes on a daily basis.
So, and the other thing that needs to be reminded here is that, the CFL just went through their first postponement of the season because of a COVID situation. We already know, that game is going to be replayed in September.
November
16th. November 16th, and the Elks are going to be playing 3 games in 7 days.
Oh boy.
That is something the CFL does not want to deal with unless they don't want to do this. That's people are like, CFL is just, they're putting the players in a bad situation because they got to make their money. Well, it's not the CFL's fault that,
no,
that something like this happens. So they have to work with what they have, at the time. So I can understand, and you're right, Frank. They went through so many hurdles just to get the season going. It was this wasn't signed off easily. So, the CFL has to do what it can to make sure that the season can continue, because right now there's some good momentum going right now. There's, CFL fans are coming back in good numbers in most cities, and they want to keep them. The last thing they want to do is have things shut down, especially with, the province keeps talking about the Delta variant and the issues surrounding that. The CFL does not want that to be an issue, and other companies, as you've mentioned, don't want that to be an issue either.
Oh, it's just the way it is today. And look at it this way, folks, for those of you that are listening and watching. The Canadian Football League has their Department of Officiating. And their Department of Officiating has rules, and then they have to execute those rules not only on the field, but also on the sidelines. Well, guess what? The Canadian Football League is being officiated by Health Canada. All right. So there's rules that they need to. I hate to keep making this point, but I'm just trying to make it clear that the Canadian Football League, not that they're trying to avoid what Health Canada wants them to do. It's the understanding. And then when the flag comes out, then you want to understand what you did wrong. You might know what you did wrong, and you try to prepare not to make that mistake, just like the players on the field. But once you make a mistake and once a problem is discovered, the CFL has to act quickly. They can't dawdle. When a player does not tell the truth about, him being vaccinated, he's not in the league. They made that decision. Now, in this case, so that we can wrap this thing in a pretty little bow.
Yeah.
If they have to deal now not only with what Health Canada wants, now they have to deal with what Health Canada is suggesting corporations, and MLSE, one of the corporations that Health Canada has affected by what they are asking people to do, right? And companies to do. So MLSE says, yeah, we're going to do this. Now all of a sudden, MLSE as a partner is doing something different than one of the other partners. So now the CFL, as always, they're dealing with ownership groups that don't think the same way. So it's tough. This is, I don't envy the position the Canadian Football League is in, because they essentially, David, have to make a decision based on an issue that comes up. And it's not one that they can blank. The answer can't be blanket everybody. You know, this is how many teams have 100% vaccination? From what I can tell, just one. This one. The MLSE is the only one. The only owners that have said that 100%. Everybody's agreed to 85. It's just gone a little higher for MLSE.
Exactly. And I mean, we're still also waiting to see if that's been fulfilled as well, because we don't know. Because we might hear some players are going to get released because, I mean, not released because of it. They might be placed on leave because of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because this policy is so. And also to wrap this up on a bow, starting. I mean, I think the next home game, everyone that comes to BMO Field has to be fully vaccinated.
Right. Yeah, because it's the fans too.
Yes.
Fans, I have friends who are not going to the next game because they're not getting vaccinated.
That's something they have to live with, unfortunately.
It's their decision. But, you know, again, you know, I'm not here, you know, look, forget COVID. We all understand COVID. It's all happening over there. It's affecting us over here. Let's get back to football. At the end of the day, this is another time when COVID affects us adversely. We can argue about how to deal with it till the cows come home. So if you don't mind, I choose not to discuss how it. We've noted.
Where's the gavel? Where's the gavel? We need the gavel.
Yeah. So let's cancel. Let's terminate the conversation. We understand now that there needs to be a new coach. We think assistant coach and new DB coach. We understand there's a rumor that Chris Jones could be that guy to replace the people who have left the Toronto Argonauts, who have disappeared from the website as well. So good luck to the Argos. Good luck to Chris Jones. If he comes, he's not a downgrade from the previous coach. No matter how successful that coach was, the defense with the Argos, Chris Jones is a special defensive coordinator. You said it yourself. When he went to the NFL and the Cleveland Browns, they were impressed with how good a defensive mind he was. We heard that from the head coach who got hired after Chris Jones got hired there. So we know that he's respected within the football community. Exactly. And that is, I think, the big news is that a big fish like Chris Jones working for the Toronto Argonauts will cause people to say, okay, here go the Argos again, going over the cap. In this case, the management cap. You know, people are going to say that, David.
Yep, I can't wait for those ones to come out.
Well, I really believe that's what's going to happen. Listen, let's talk about some football, specifically the games that were played this week. Well, let's start with the Friday game, the Argo game. You and I cover them. You know, a team that played as bad as the Toronto Argonauts played on Friday night and won 17-16. To play, and I'm defining it as bad because, number one, there were a lot of mistakes. And to still come up winning, that's in normal cases in a lot of sports, the really good teams win games even when they play poorly. Is this a good team who played poorly and won anyway, or is it just the fact that the goalpost was a little too wide for the kicker in Hamilton?
It's actually a really good question. And I've been thinking about this ever since that game. And we know the players are very critical of that performance. It's more so when a team is critical of that performance and knows that what they kept saying this was not a good game for us. This is not the performance we expect of ourselves. So I really do think that this was a good team that just in the first half looked really good. And then the second half looked really bad. And let's not forget, Hamilton's not a bad team.
Oh, they're a good team.
They proved that on Labor Day that they are a good team. So, and they had their own challenges too. So, these were two teams that were coming off of a short week, not a lot of preparation, and just execution was not there.
Yeah, and I really, and anybody who doubts the fact that Hamilton might have won that game if Dane didn't get hurt is kidding themselves. His injury helped them win, and then the period on that was the kick. But like you said, this is a team that played really well. One of the things that we really need to see more from the Toronto Argonauts as far as quarterback is concerned, the one thing that has been consistent over the past couple of years, poor judgment by Argonaut quarterbacks. We saw it again in that game.
Yeah, Arbuckle, there's one play that stands out the most, and that's him trying to throw it to the sidelines, but it missed by a good 10, 15 yards based on what you try to do as a quarterback. That right there, I think, he was under pressure quite a bit in that game, and he wasn't able to take those shots down the field. He missed on a few of them as well. So, those are the plays that when it's a close game, those are the plays you have to make. You can't, I saw in the Labor Day game where Dane Evans, part of the reason why the Argos couldn't get pressure on him was because he'd either get out of the pocket or he was throwing it away, and it's a skill of the quarterback to know when to hold on to it and when to get rid of it.
When to eat the ball.
And that's
sometimes you have to eat it.
And so, that's something I think with Arbuckle, sometimes he eats it when he shouldn't have, and it caused the fumble against Winnipeg in that game at home, and it caused a touchdown. And then there's that play against Hamilton where he's throwing it away, but he doesn't throw it hard enough. And he was very hard on himself with that. But at the same time, you have to wonder, are those lessons going to start to kick in? Because teams are going to realize, hey, if we can get pressure on him, and if he could make a mistake. And
he'll make a mistake from the defense of the other team. That's how they're going to motivate themselves. They're going to say, if we put pressure on him, he'll make a mistake because he's done it before. Yes. And he's going to have to be the one who doesn't make that mistake. Let's be clear. He won the game. He threw 1 TD and 2 interceptions. For me, we talk about quarterbacks all the time. Nichols, not the Nichols of this year, but the Nichols of the past. He didn't make mistakes. That's what led to Winnipeg playing so well, because he didn't kill his team. He didn't put his team in a bad position. So ball security. This is a total, this has to be solved, because ball security for a quarterback is no different than a running back. Ball security. That is the worst problem the Argos have right now. Handing the ball over. Ball security. Getting stupid penalties that cause you to lose possession of the ball. Ball security. So at the end of the day, for me, what the Argos have to do, and I don't know, I'm hoping anyway that we see something, because, and it doesn't matter which team. It really bothers me when I see a team make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And we've come fresh from sitting at BMO Field, you and I, of a season of the same mistakes over and over and over again. The really good teams improve by eliminating mistakes. Do you think the Argos can do it? See, that's the problem. You're not alone. You're not alone.
I think the same way. Here's the one thing I know. The Argos, when they have a bad performance, they're able to back it up.
Right.
So I think, look, this game on Friday against Saskatchewan will tell us whether they can, because Saskatchewan is a team that thrives off of defensive play. So,
and they're reeling right now. And they're reeling right now. Well, they got to be a very unhappy team.
And they're playing at home, which makes them a very hard team, because that was kind of their saving grace to start the seasons. They were playing at home, and they just finally played their first road game and were awful. Yes. But no, you know what? Like, I think any quarterback, if they're, they can limit those mistakes if they're also, if their receivers are making plays and their offensive line is giving them a chance, I think there's a lot. I'm not ready to say whether or not for sure Arbuckle can't get it done, because it's again, we're bringing up the same issue for the Argos. Maybe this isn't the time to do it, but I think you have to give Arbuckle. This is only his third start of the season, and
Oh,
he did.
I hear you. I hear you, and I agree with you. But there has to be a respect for ball security, and I just don't. I don't see it right now. I don't see it right now. I hope to see it. Looking at from their perspective, the Argo perspective. If you don't see it, it could be a problem.
No, it's very true. And right now, Hamilton has an even bigger problem.
Yeah, they need a third quarterback
because Dane Evans is out 4 to 6 weeks.
Yep.
And Jeremiah Mazzoli was struggling to start the year. He was not even able to dress. That he's dealing with an injury. So
is he week to week, day to day?
Mazzoli, I actually have no idea whether he was on the 6th game. If I'd assume maybe he was just on the 1 game for this week. Because you know what, I didn't even get the 6-game list from the Ticats right now.
Yeah, they're a little different when.
I'm gonna look it up right now if you want.
I'm looking right now too. So Mazzoli, he's not on the 6th game. So that
he
means
was on the one. He was on the 1 game injury.
Yeah, so he could. You never know. I mean, it's one of those situations, David. Sorry, it's one of those situations, David, where players play with an injury. He's going. He may be healed up enough to be able to go out there and see what he can do.
Yeah,
but then you're playing with a guy who is not 100% healthy. So this is a tough break for Hamilton. I hope they can work things out. This is a team that, as far as I'm concerned, deserves a bit better luck. But every team gets bad luck. Let me be clear. I don't want to sound like I'm feeling sorry for the Ticats, but I am. I mean, they had. If there was a strength that the Hamilton Tiger Cats had, it was that they had probably the best 1-2 punch in quarterbacks. And I think Dane Evans showed us that that's true. I mean, what other team has 2 quarterbacks that can play as well as Mazzoli and Dane Evans?
And we've continually said this is something every CFL team needs right now. You need capable quarterbacks. Because right now, Ottawa doesn't even have 1 capable quarterback, it looks like. We see that, in Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, 2 quarterbacks that have kind of shaky, situations there. Calgary losing Bo. Jake Meyer did pretty well, all things considering.
Right.
And then, there's very few CFL quarterbacks right now that have stayed healthy enough through the first bit of the season. And I mean, Hamilton thought they were well in the in a good position.
Yeah,
but it always changes once one of those guys is out, and not just out long term.
Yes,
and it's gonna be tough to come back.
Yeah, and well, the mayor of Calgary, the mayor of Calgary, he proved that he first 3 games throws for 300 yards, something a CFL quarterback's never done. So, obviously the guy has talent, but let's also remember that when we're talking about quarterbacks who aren't that experienced, the book gets written up real quick. Defenses can catch up to quarterbacks who are not that well known. So it gets tougher for them as they move along. If that's assuming that they're not as good as maybe they were to begin with. But a lot of quarterbacks like Dane Evans prove that they can do it long term. Calero, same thing. Harris, same thing. We've seen it over the years. So hopefully Hamilton sorts out its quarterback. I'm always sympathetic to the fans, and I'm not a big fan of watching fans in distress. And I know the Hamilton fans right now are in distress because whether they admit it to themselves or not is they're going to ask the big question: who's going to be the quarterback? And a lot of them had lost faith in Mazzoli. Now, so Hamilton's in a very interesting position, David.
Yeah, no, they are, and we thought that they were going to be kind of the favorites in the East.
Absolutely.
And now, as we've always said, the East division is always usually wide open. We're always
volatile.
One team that will say, "Yeah, we want it. We want number one." And right now, Toronto's number one, but they haven't really given that we want it yet, because
they haven't locked in. They haven't caused people to believe that they're real. And I don't mean they're not a good team. They're a good team. There's no doubt about that. But are they the top ranked team in the Eastern Division? They definitely haven't shown that with their inconsistency and some of the basic errors that take teams from being really good to being average. And so right now, the inconsistency that they have makes them good and bad, which means average. So good luck to both those teams. The two things Hamilton needs to figure out their quarterback situation. The Argos have to figure how to be mistake-free in every area, not just any one in particular. Not one individual needs to be blamed for that.
And that's on coaching.
Yeah. Moving on to a game in Winnipeg with Saskatchewan visiting. They lose 33-9. Saskatchewan was the team in the West last season, the 2019 season, that finished first. They came into this season and they looked like world beaters. What happened here in this game? What caused Saskatchewan? I mean, their quarterback didn't look as good as he's looked in the past. Their defense wasn't as effective as as we've seen it, and their offense completely went dry. Was it all Winnipeg?
You know what? You have to give that Blue Bombers defense a lot of credit, because it's probably the toughest one to go up against in the CFL.
They're mean too.
Yeah, they had 4 sacks in that game. They had the forced fumble, interception, and really one thing they do well, and we already know that Fajardo likes to get out of the pocket and run on a few plays. He did that a couple of times, but when you are getting knocked around as much as he is, you're not going to be as willing to do it as much as you would like to.
Absolutely.
And and also Fajardo just didn't have the accuracy there either. He only threw the ball. I mean, he got taken out of the game. He only threw the ball 17 times, and he did have that one long throw to Braden Lenius, but I don't know. I think they have a good running game, and they were running the ball quite well. I just think the quarterback play just wasn't there for them, and
it wasn't.
He didn't have the protection either.
Totally agree. The next game, Calgary at Edmonton, flip and flop.
Yeah, we saw an Edmonton offense that came alive against Calgary in Labor Day totally go on its head. Like this, Trevor Harris, for him to not throw for 300 yards, that says something. And James Wilder Jr., who had been one of the top running backs, him and William Stanback, only had 62 yards on the ground. Only carried the ball 11 times. And, Calgary, I give Calgary a lot of credit, one, for being able to keep those offensive weapons at bay. But then, you get Bo Levi Mitchell back. Him and Kamar Jordan.
That's Kamar Jordan. 159 yards.
He had 12 receptions.
Yes.
He had more combined receptions than Darrell Walker, Greg Ellingson, and I could throw in a bunch of other receivers from Edmonton there.
Absolutely. And then you look at the
one-man record.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And Kamar Jordan has just imagine if they still had all the receivers they had in Calgary. I mean, I think part of the problem with Bo Levi Mitchell is I think he's suffering from a broken heart. I mean, the players that he had to throw to that aren't there now, and he still has a couple. Like Kamar Jordan is amazing, and Markeith Ambles. I mean, give him a little more time.
Yeah,
not so much experience. This is the thing that Bo Levi and Coach Dickinson. they have to get used to, and that is that people leave, and last year was a major departure, and there's a little bit of stress on the sidelines between Dickinson and the quarterback.
Yeah. Well, you brought up Markeith Ambles. He had 17 targets.
Yes,
Only
they
caught
want him to be good.
Like they're pushing for. Like, but the thing is, they're putting him also in a lot of tough catches.
Yes,
So that's the other thing to consider. But I also think that with Bo, yeah, when you pay a quarterback that much, guess what? You got to make do with what you have because that's all they can afford as well.
The reality is you're given X amount of money, and now you got to disperse it. And the more you like a player, the more you're going to end up paying him, and he better come through for you. You got to hope for value. And I don't think Bo Levi Mitchell is someone who won't give the Calgary, Stampeders value for his contract. I think, he's injured, and when he's not looked well, we found out that he was injured. So he's not a guy who whines about being in pain or injured. He plays through it, doesn't make excuses. A lot of people don't like his cockiness, but I consider it more confidence than cockiness. Again, this is another thing where this on a personal level, I hope he gets healthy. We need a healthy Bo Levi Mitchell.
Yeah, it wasn't really his best game either. It looked like it on the scoreboard with him scoring 32 points, but
his percentage wasn't good.
He had
one TD, one interception.
Right, so he's still working back. He's still working his way back.
Yeah, and good for him. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Calgary not being involved at the end of the season in a fight for a top spot in the CFL, that's uncharted territory. So this year could be the year where, like we talked about the Argonauts, and there are a lot of teams. There's that point I talked about with you in the press box in Toronto. Where we all said, oh, how amazing these teams and these players, they look like, oh my goodness, they look well put together. They seem ready to play. I would have thought there would have been, a bit of problem, but it seems to me, just like that player who comes back from an injury, David, they have that first game, and that first game is all on adrenaline. And then all of a sudden, the actual ability to play in the next game starts to become evident. I think that's what we're getting in the Canadian Football League.
I think so. And right now, the Calgary finds himself not out of a playoff, a little well out of a playoff. You look at now, like it's still early, but based on the trend they were on, and they've played 6 games, and most teams have played 5. I think Winnipeg is the only other team that's played 6 so far. They were given a bit of a head start, and they're behind, so that's going to be very tough for them to catch up.
And is there a person in the Canadian Football League that is more likable than La Police, the head coach of the Ottawa Red Blacks? Again, here I go, showing feelings. I don't know if I should. This is a touchy-feely day for me. Man, this has got to be tough on Lapo. 45-13, Ottawa loses in BC. Thank goodness it was in BC. But Ottawa looks like nothing's working for them, and it begins at quarterback, and the team is basically, I don't know, decomposing on a weekly basis.
This is what I feared for Ottawa, was that they put a lot of faith in Nichols, and him and Lapolice have worked magic before, but one thing is you cannot keep going for field goals when the other team is going for touchdowns.
Yeah.
That's a good BC team. We know it because Michael Riley he's found his groove, and he's got some very good receivers. The defense has gone better, but I'm not sure if they're there yet. But when you're asking too much, I think, of Dominique Davis to go up against a Michael Riley who threw for 4 touchdowns. Davis threw for 333 yards, but Michael Riley was at 84%.
Yes, You were talking about players who get. I shouldn't use the term. I shouldn't use the term overpaid. Where they have to justify their paycheck. If there's a player that I'm going to say this, and I'm actually going to mean it. If there's a player that can't be overpaid, I think Mike Riley's one of them. And I say it not just because of his ability at quarterback, but his attitude about playing through pain, playing no matter what. Nobody in the league has shown me as much as he has with, man, the challenges he's come up against and not complain. If I had that offensive line in 19 at the beginning of the season, I would have been, hey, get me an offensive line, man. He never complained 1 second, and he came out injured so many times. He literally bled a few times. It looked like he had concussions at some point, and this guy just keeps playing. So in that sense, you can't overpay a guy like that.
No, and it just shows the value of a quarterback in the CFL right now. You need it.
Stay healthy.
Yeah, not only you need him to stay healthy, but he's now showing a great example to the guy that's sitting on the bench waiting for his opportunity one day.
Absolutely.
And he's got a good guy to groom him right now.
Yep. 4 TDs, 1 interception. That's the ratio you're looking for. You'd rather have that interception be a 0, but that's the next best thing when you're throwing 4 touchdown passes. On the other hand, Dominique Davis, 1-1. I consider that very important because for me, that's a statistic that talks about ball security, and I've talked about that in this show. I can't express enough the importance of ball security, because it's tough enough to win. It's hard to win when you're beating yourself. The opposition doesn't need any help. They're looking for it. They're finding their own.
I think 2 things just to end on with Ottawa there. I would like for them to find a running game that's a lot more productive than what they're getting right now. And they got to convert some of these field goals to touchdowns.
Yes.
Lewis Ward has definitely earned his money so far this season.
Yeah. What do you think of Anthony Coombs in Ottawa?
I know Anthony from his time with the Argos. This is someone that's had injury issues and has always
day one.
The talent was there. It's just the talent's only as good as when you're on the field to show it off. I think I like the move for him because he gets a feature spot and maybe he can carve himself out that top receiver role. Like he's the top receiver, I think, right now in Ottawa. I mean, he was in this past game.
Yep.
I think right now he's probably the best they've got, and that's good for him. For Ottawa, I don't think that's what you were expecting, and that might be a bit of a problem.
Yeah, they're going to have to. They will have to find some help.
I agree.
I think the first person to go, the management team, if it changes, I think it'll change at the GM position.
I think so. They need a quarterback. Davis, I'll give him credit. He's done as well as he can, but Dominic Davis should not be throwing 50 times a game. That's not his game. And I think if you get a better running game and you get a few more receivers, maybe that offense can improve. But right now, they're going to have to just go with what they got, and then they'll have to make those changes down the road.
Absolutely. So in the standings, Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, BC, Edmonton, and Calgary, as you stated. In the East, Toronto, Montreal, Hamilton, and Ottawa. So a good week for games. There are some really interesting games, but we really don't like those blowouts, but I guess they happen.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, David, thanks again. And thanks for the news on the new assistant coach. Well, we'll see. Anyway. Well, thanks, David.
Thank you, Frank.
Okay, he's David Morassutti. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thank you for watching. I'm Candid Frank.